My January Tales. Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Long ago, in a town in Persia, there lived two brothers, one named Qasim and the other Ali Baba. One day, Ali Baba was working in the forest when he saw 40 well-mounted armed men. As Ali Baba watched, each rider took a saddlebag from his horse and walked behind the man who seemed to be the leader. This man stood before a rock face and said, "Open sesame!" Immediately, a door opened in the rock. Making the men go in first, the leader followed and the door closed behind him. After a long time of waiting, Ali Baba saw the door in the rock open. First the leader came out, then his men. Turning back to the door, the leader said, "Shut, sesame!" The door shut and the men rode off. Then Ali Baba stood in front of the smooth rock face and said, "Open sesame!" The door instantly flew open and Ali Baba stepped into the cavern. On shelves round the walls were sacks of gold and silver, bales of silk, valuable carpets, and jars of jewels. Clearly, this was the hoard of a robber band. Ali Baba fetched his asses, loaded the animals with as much gold as they could carry, stood outside the cave and said, "Shut, sesame!" The door of the cave slammed shut. Ali Baba hurried back to town. When Ali Baba arrived home, he poured the gold onto a table in front of his wife. "Tell no one about this," he warned her. However, the wife did tell Qasim's wife, who told Qasim, who hurried to visit his brother Ali Baba. Ali Baba was not pleased that his secret was known. Reluctantly, he told his brother the whole story. The next morning, Qasim went to the rock and, standing in front of it, he called, "Open sesame!" At once, the door in the rock flew open and Qasim stepped inside. Qasim went forward, deep into the robber's cave, scarcely noticing that the door was closing behind him. He dragged as many bags of gold as he could to the mouth of the cave and then tried to reopen the door. However, the excitement of finding treasure had confused his brain and he could not remember the magic words. At noon, the robbers rode back towards their cave. They stood before the rock while their leader pronounced the words, "Open sesame!" At once, the door flew open and Qasim rushed out. He tried to escape, but he could not elude 40 men, and he was soon beaten unconscious and dumped in the cave. Night fell, and when Qasim did not return home, his wife became alarmed. She ran to Ali Baba and confessed that his brother had gone to the forest to plunder the treasure cave. Ali Baba went to the cave and fetched his wounded brother home. When the robbers next visited the cave and found Qasim gone, they were astounded. Then the robber chief found out that Qasim was hurt and that his brother, Ali Baba, was spending much gold. Correctly believing that these two brothers were the ones who knew the secret of the cave, the robber chief devised a plan. He bought 19 mules and loaded them with 38 jars. Into one jar, he put oil. He ordered his remaining 37 men to climb into the other jars. 2 of the robbers had already been captured. Then, posing as an oil merchant, the chief asked for a night's shelter with Ali Baba. The robber chief had arranged that the robbers would spring from the jars, find their gold, and hasten back to the forest. However, a slave girl ran out of oil. As she touched a jar, she heard a whisper. "Is it time, master?" The girl answered in a gruff voice, "The time is not yet." The brave girl went along the line of jars, tapping at them to see how many contained men instead of oil. Then she woke Ali Baba. Ali Baba secured the lids of all the jars with strong ropes. Then he seized the chief. All the robbers were flung into prison, and Ali Baba lived happily for the rest of his life. Jimmy McBear. Jimmy McBear was a Scottish teddy bear from Edinburgh. He wore a tartan kilt with a sporran at the front. He wore a tweed jacket and a tam o' shanter on his head. "Och aye, lads and lassies," he said when he met the other toys. If, as always happened, he was given porridge for breakfast and haggis for dinner, he ate it up and said, "Och aye, that was delicious, the new." When anyone called, "Hey, Scotty," Jimmy McBear turned and smiled. "How I do admire Jimmy." "He is such a wonderful person," said Dolly as she saw Jimmy eating his third bowl of porridge that day and smiling at some visitors. "What is so wonderful about Jimmy?" asked a woolly lamb who had come for the afternoon with the visitors. "Well," explained Dolly, "Jimmy doesn't really like wearing tartan and eating porridge and haggis, but Jimmy knows that people expect him to say, 'Och aye,' and answer when they call him Scotty, so he does it to please them. He chokes down plateful after plateful of porridge, when he would much rather be eating pancakes and maple syrup. And although he does like haggis, he often sighs for a donut and coffee for lunch instead." The lamb looked at Jimmy McBear. "What should I call him if I don't call him Scotty?" he asked. "In Scotland," said Dolly, "they call each other Jimmy, whatever their names happen to be. However, if I were you, I should stick to calling him Mr. McBear." The Story of Aladdin. Long ago in China, a sorcerer, by pretending to be his uncle, persuaded a boy named Aladdin to go down to an underground palace. The sorcerer said, "That door leads to the palace. You must walk through 3 rooms filled with gold and silver, which you must not touch. Open a door and walk into a garden. You may touch what you wish there, but take my advice and do not bother with anything except a lamp, which you will see in a niche in the far wall. Tuck the lamp in your waistband and bring it back to me." Then the sorcerer gave a ring for Aladdin to wear on his finger and told him it would keep him from harm. Aladdin stepped down into the earth and pushed open the door. The palace was as his uncle had described it. Aladdin hastened through the rooms filled with gold and silver into the garden. Growing in the garden were trees loaded with strange, hard-looking fruit colored red, green, and silver. He picked handfuls of the fruit and filled his pockets and crammed the front of his vest full of the strange objects. Then, remembering his uncle's words, he picked up the lamp from the niche and hurried back to the steps leading out of the palace. As soon as he reached them, he called, "Uncle, please help me out." "Give me the lamp first," replied the sorcerer. "Not until I am out of here," replied Aladdin crossly. At once the sorcerer flew into a rage. He stamped his feet and said 2 magic words. The stone went back over the hole, leading to the palace. Then the sorcerer went back to Africa from whence he had come. Meanwhile, Aladdin was trapped on the steps between the palace door and the stone. He clasped his hands together to pray for help, and in so doing rubbed the ring which the sorcerer had given to him. At once, a huge genie appeared before him and said, "What wouldst thou have, O master?" "Save me from this place," begged Aladdin. Immediately, he found himself standing in the fresh air. He hurried home. When Aladdin awoke the next morning, he lifted up the old lamp he had taken from the underground garden. "I will sell this for a few pieces of silver," he said. "It is dirty," replied his mother. "Let me clean it before you take it to market." Hardly had she commenced to rub the lamp than a huge genie appeared. The poor woman dropped the lamp in fear, but Aladdin picked it up. At once the genie looked at him and said, "I am the slave of whoever holds the lamp. Your wish is my command." With the help of the genie and the fruits which he had taken from the underground garden, which were really jewels, Aladdin became a rich man. He married a princess and lived in a palace. However, when Aladdin was away, the sorcerer returned and stood outside Aladdin's palace calling, "New lamps for old! Who wants new lamps in exchange for old ones?" Aladdin's wife exchanged the old magic lamp for a shiny new lamp. At once the sorcerer became master of the genie and ordered, "This very night, take me and Aladdin's palace and everyone in it back to Africa." Luckily, Aladdin still wore the magic ring. With its help, he went to Africa and found the princess living as a prisoner of the sorcerer in Aladdin's own palace. Aladdin hurried to the nearest town and brought a sleeping potion, which he put into the sorcerer's wine. That evening at supper, the sorcerer fell into a deep sleep. Aladdin took back the lamp and at once transported himself and his wife, the palace, and all his servants back to their hometown in China. The sorcerer was left in Africa under a spell, and Aladdin lived with the princess in splendor for the rest of their lives. Careful Hans. Once upon a time, there was a boy called Careful Hans who always did what he was told without thinking. One day, Hans went to visit his grandmother. When it was time to go home, his grandmother said, "You have been a good boy. Take this needle to your mother and put it somewhere safe as you walk home." As it happened, Hans walked home behind a cart full of hay. He pushed the needle in amongst the hay, thinking there was nowhere safer than the farmer's cart. When he reached home, he told his mother what he had done. But although she visited the farmer and searched all through the hay, she never found the needle. "You foolish boy, Hans," she said. "You should have put the needle in your pocket." The next day, Careful Hans again visited his grandmother. When it was time to go home, Grandma said, "You have been a good boy, Hans. You may have this puppy to take home, but remember to carry it somewhere safe." Hans remembered what his mother had said about the needle, and he pushed the puppy into his pocket. However, the puppy did not like being in the pocket, and by the time they reached home, the puppy had chewed a big hole in Hans's jacket. Hans's mother was not pleased. "You foolish boy," she said. "You should have tied a length of string to the puppy's collar and pulled it along behind you." "I will try to do better next time," promised Hans. The next day, Hans again went to visit his grandmother. When it was time to go home, his grandmother said, "You have been a good boy. Take this meat home as a present to your mother." And she gave Hans a fine joint of beef. Careful Hans remembered what his mother had said about the puppy. He tied a length of string round the meat and dragged it along behind him. Of course, every dog living along the lane dashed out and took a bite of meat as Hans walked past. By the time he reached home, there was very little meat left, and that was unfit to eat. His mother was cross. "You foolish boy," she said. "You should have wrapped the meat in paper and carried it on your head where no dog could reach." "I will try to remember," promised Hans. The next day, Hans again went to visit his grandmother. When it was time to go home, his grandmother said, "You have been a good boy. Take this pound of butter home to your mother." Hans took the pound of butter and, remembering what his mother had said, wrapped it in paper and put it on his head. The sun was hot and the butter melted. It ran down his hair and over his jacket. When his mother saw him, she said, "What a mess! Why are you so greasy?" When Hans told her about the butter, she said, "You foolish boy, you will never visit your grandmother again." Luckily, as Hans grew older, he learned to be sensible, and his mother changed her mind and did allow him to visit his dear grandmother, and everyone was happy. The Wise Farm Boy. Once upon a time, a farm boy was plowing a field. In the middle of the field, he found a circle where the grass and earth were beaten flat as if many tiny feet had been dancing there. Now, the farm boy was a good boy who often visited his old grandmother. Many times she had told him of how she had seen fairies dancing in a fairy ring. "If this is a place where the fairies like to dance, then I must not plow it," thought the boy. "I must not offend the fairies. They can be quite bad-tempered at times." He marked a circle round the ring and did not disturb it with his plow. At midday, the boy was hungry and took out the small piece of bread and cheese, which was all his mother could give him. Suddenly, to his amazement, he saw a table in the center of the fairy ring. The table was spread with roast meat and pies and fruit and wine. The boy ate as if at a banquet. When he had finished, the table disappeared. He never knew where the food came from, but from that day onwards, he was always lucky. His grandmother said the fairy folk were thanking him. "We old grandmothers have lived for a long time and we know a lot," she said. "If every boy listened to the advice of his grandmother, he would do well in the world." And that is very true. Nurse Nancy. Nancy's favorite Christmas present was her nurse's outfit. It was made up of a nurse's striped dress and pinafore with a smart cap to match. Then, all in the same box were bandages and sticking plaster and ointment, plastic bowls, a thermometer, a toy wristwatch, and a notebook and pencil. Nancy looked smart in the uniform, and she learned how to use all the things in the box. Then one day, Cousin Kate came to visit and brought her doll with her. As they walked up the path to the front door, Cousin Kate tripped over. Kate did not hurt herself, but the doll fell into the mud and scraped her elbow on some gravel. At once, Nancy ran to put on her nurse's uniform. She washed Dolly clean and put ointment and a bandage on to her scraped elbow. Then she took Dolly's temperature and said, "Dolly is very shaken up. She needs to lie down and rest." Kate and Nurse Nancy put Dolly on a cushion and covered her with a blanket. A little later, they came back to look at her. Nurse Nancy used the toy wristwatch to help her take Dolly's pulse. "Dolly is quite better now," said Nurse Nancy. "She is fit enough to go home when you are ready." "Thank you," smiled Cousin Kate. It must be wonderful to be a nurse. The Frog Prince. In the olden days, a princess dropped a golden ball into a well. If you would love me and have me for your companion and let me sit by you at table and eat from your plate and sleep in your bed, then I will fetch the golden ball for you, said a frog. Oh, yes, I will promise all that, agreed the princess, thinking to herself, what nonsense! Who ever heard of a frog doing those things? At once, the frog sank down into the water and then came to the surface with the golden ball in its mouth. The princess snatched it up and ran towards the palace. She had no intention of keeping her promise to the frog. The next day, the king's daughter was sitting at table with the king and all his court when there was a knocking at the door. A voice cried, "King's daughter, let me in." The princess got up and ran to the door to see who could be there. When she opened the door, she saw the frog sitting outside. She slammed the door shut and went back to her place at table. The king noticed that the princess had gone pale and asked her what was wrong. "There is a green slimy frog outside," she replied. "Yesterday, he rescued my golden ball for me, and in return, I promised that he could be my companion, but I did not dream that he would ever come to the palace and expect to sit with me at table and eat from my plate. It is ridiculous. Frogs do not do things like that." The king looked stern. "A promise is a promise," he said. "That which you have promised, you must now perform." And the princess was obliged to open the door and let the frog in. It hopped at her heels until she reached her chair. Then it croaked, "Lift me to sit by you." The princess pretended not to hear, but the king ordered her to do as the frog asked. No sooner was the frog on the chair than it wanted to be on the table. It said, "Push your golden plate close to me." The princess did so, but everyone could see she loathed having the slimy frog near her. The frog ate well, but the princess scarcely nibbled a mouthful. "I have had enough food now," said the frog at last. "Pick me up and carry me to your room and make ready your silken bed." With the king watching her, the princess again obeyed the frog. But as soon as they were in her bedroom, she dropped him in a corner and climbed into her bed alone. However, the frog was not content to stay in the cold corner. "I am tired and wish to sleep in a comfortable bed," it said. The princess suddenly felt sorry for the ugly creature. Bending down, she kissed the frog tenderly. At once, the frog turned into a tall, young prince, and he and the princess fell in love. "By kissing me, you have released me from a spell put on me by a wicked witch," said the prince. And he and the princess were married and lived happily ever after. The Disappointed Wolf. Once upon a time, a little lamb was being naughty. "You behave yourself," said his mother sternly, "or I will let Big Bad Wolf get you." Of course, she did not mean it. However, it happened that at the same moment, Big Bad Wolf was passing under the window and he heard what Mother Lamb had said. "Oh, goody and yum, yum, yum," he thought. "If I wait here, I shall get a tasty meal." So he waited under the window, and he waited, and he waited, and he waited. But the tasty meal did not come his way. Bedtime arrived, and the little lamb had a nightmare. He dreamt that Big Bad Wolf caught him. The little lamb called out to his mother and told her about the dream. "Don't worry about dreams," smiled the mother. "Dreams cannot hurt you." In any case, if Big Bad Wolf did come here, I would not let him catch you. I should set Father onto him and he would soon be chased away." When he heard that, Big Bad Wolf was most indignant and got up. "I'm not staying here trying to help a mother who keeps changing her mind," he said as he trotted off. The end.